American woman walked into a French cooking school for the first time. Everyone around her moved like professionals. They chopped onions with perfect rhythm, almost like playing a piano. But Julia Child looked completely different. Her knife moved slowly, almost as if she was cutting through wood. The instructor walked over and showed her the proper technique. Most people would have felt embarrassed, but Julia wasn't there to give up. That night, she went home and bought 50 pounds of onions. She stood in the kitchen and practiced again and again. When her husband Paul walked through the door, the powerful smell immediately filled the room. But Julia didn't care, because after years of searching, she had finally found something she truly loved. This was Paris in 1949. But half a century later, thousands of miles away in New York, another woman was also searching for a purpose. Her name was Julie Powell. She was 30 years old, and her dream of becoming a writer seemed farther away than ever. For 8 years, she had written novels, hoping one day someone would recognize her talent. But nothing happened. No publisher called. No breakthrough came. Instead, she found herself sitting inside a small office cubicle, answering difficult phone calls from people sharing painful experiences after September 11th. Every day, she listened to other people's struggles while feeling stuck in her own life. Around her, everyone seemed successful. Some friends were managing huge projects. Others had impressive careers, magazine columns, and important positions. One friend who worked as an editor even wrote about Julie's situation in a column. The story described her as a woman who felt lost at 30. Her difficult period had become someone else's material, and when Julie looked at her own life, she couldn't find much to celebrate. The only thing that still brought her happiness was cooking. After a stressful day, the kitchen became the one place where she could feel calm. Cooking gave her something she could control. No matter how uncertain life felt, she knew that if she followed the right steps, something beautiful could come from simple ingredients. Seeing her passion, her husband Eric encouraged her to start writing again. After all, Julie was still a writer. Maybe she just needed the right story. At first, Julie didn't know what she could possibly write about. Then Eric suggested something simple. Why not write about cooking? And suddenly, Julie remembered the person who had inspired her since childhood, Julia Child. When Julie was 8 years old, her mother once prepared an unforgettable French meal for their family. The recipe came from Julia Child's famous cookbook. The dish was beef bourguignon. The taste stayed in Julie's memory for years. From that moment, Julia Child became more than just a chef. To Julie, she represented confidence, passion, and the courage to try something new. Every week, Julie would sit on the couch and watch old episodes of Julia Child's cooking show. The woman wearing pearls would laugh loudly while preparing complicated dishes. If something went wrong, she simply smiled and continued. Her happiness felt impossible to ignore. It was exactly the kind of energy Julie needed. Then an idea appeared. What if she cooked every recipe from Julia Child's cookbook? What if she documented the entire journey online? It sounded crazy, but maybe crazy was exactly what Julie needed. She created a plan. 365 days, 524 recipes, 1 year to complete Julia Child's entire cookbook. In August 2002, Julie launched a blog called The Julia Project, and her impossible challenge officially began. On the first day, she attempted her first recipe. The kitchen was no longer just a place to make dinner. It became the place where Julie slowly rebuilt her confidence. Every successful dish reminded her that she was still capable of finishing something. Soon, readers began discovering her blog. At first, only a few people followed her journey, but slowly, more comments appeared. Strangers encouraged her. Some even shared their own cooking stories. For the first time in a long while, Julie felt like people cared about what she was creating. But then she faced one of her biggest challenges: lobster. Julia Child's recipe required handling a live lobster, and Julie was terrified. She stared at the instructions, knowing she had to overcome this fear. Finally, she gathered enough courage and placed the lobster into the boiling water. But the moment she covered the pot, everything became chaotic. The lid moved. Julie panicked and rushed away from the kitchen. Only Eric could step in and help her finish the recipe. The disaster was embarrassing, but strangely enough, her readers loved it because Julie wasn't pretending to be perfect. She was simply showing the honest reality of chasing a dream. As Julie continued her challenge, cooking became more than a hobby. It became proof that she was finally moving forward. On her 30th birthday, Eric gave her a special gift: a pearl necklace inspired by Julia Child's signature style. For Julie, it wasn't just jewelry. It represented the person who had given her the courage to start again. Her blog continued growing. More and more readers followed her journey. They laughed at her mistakes, celebrated her victories, and watched as an ordinary woman slowly transformed her life one recipe at a time. But success didn't mean everything became easy. Around her 100th recipe, Julie faced one of her toughest challenges: a complicated dish called aspic. The recipe required hours of preparation, but after multiple attempts, the dish still wouldn't turn out correctly. After failing again and again, Julie finally lost her patience. She threw the failed dish into the sink. For a moment, she wanted to quit, but deep inside, she knew she couldn't, because this project had become more than completing recipes. It had become a promise to herself. The next day, she started again. She continued cooking, even when things went wrong. Then came another difficult moment. While preparing a complicated chicken dish, everything suddenly fell apart. The fillings spilled everywhere, and the kitchen became a complete mess. Julie stood there surrounded by the disaster. She wasn't crying because of the food. She was crying because she realized how much pressure she had placed on herself. At that moment, the phone rang. A journalist had discovered her blog. He wanted to visit her home for dinner with an important guest. That guest was Judith Jones, the legendary editor who had helped discover Julia Child's cookbook years earlier. For Julie, this was a dream opportunity. She immediately decided to prepare the dish that connected her to Julia Child from childhood: beef bourguignon. She carefully prepared everything. She arranged the table. She decorated the room. She wanted everything to be perfect. But just before the dinner, the phone rang again. The journalist canceled. The important guest wasn't coming. Julie stood there holding the phone, unsure whether to laugh or cry. After all the preparation, the moment she had imagined was gone. Eric tried to comfort her, but when he tasted the dish, he simply added a little more seasoning. To him, it was still just dinner. To Julie, it felt like her entire dream had collapsed. Years later, she would realize that she had become too focused on proving herself to strangers online. The blog that was supposed to bring joy had slowly started controlling her life. Meanwhile, Julie began thinking about Julia Child's own journey, a woman who also struggled to find her place. After World War II, many women were expected to return home and leave professional positions behind. Julia Child became a housewife, but she didn't feel fulfilled. When she moved to Paris with her husband Paul, she tried different activities. She learned crafts. She played games. But nothing truly interested her, until one day she entered a small French restaurant. She ordered a simple dish, a piece of fish cooked with butter and lemon. The crispy texture, the rich aroma, the unforgettable flavor. One bite changed everything. Julia realized she had finally discovered her passion. She wanted to learn French cooking. When she told Paul, he supported her dream. For her birthday, he gave her a massive French cookbook. But there was one problem. The entire book was written in French. Neither of them understood most of it. So Julia made a decision. She would go to cooking school. When she arrived at Le Cordon Bleu, the school immediately noticed something unusual: a tall American woman walking into a world dominated by French chefs. Instead of placing her with professional students, they assigned her to a basic cooking class. They assumed she was simply a wealthy housewife looking for a new hobby. But Julia had other plans. She wanted to become a real chef. She walked into the office and requested to join the professional program. The school warned her that class was expensive. It was designed for professional cooks, and almost everyone there was male. But Julia didn't hesitate. She paid the tuition and entered the classroom. The moment she walked in, the room became quiet. A group of French male chefs looked at her with doubt. They didn't believe she belonged there. Then came the first lesson: chopping onions. The other students finished quickly. Julia struggled with even one onion, but instead of feeling defeated, she practiced harder. Her instructor showed her the correct technique. The knife and hand had to move together. The goal was simple: control the knife, protect your fingers, focus on the onion. Julia went home and practiced every single day. She wasn't trying to prove she was better than everyone else. She was trying to prove she could become the person she wanted to be. 2 weeks later, during a knife skills test, something changed. The woman everyone underestimated finished first. The same students who doubted her began looking at her differently. Julia Child had entered the kitchen as an outsider, but she was slowly becoming someone impossible to ignore. From that moment on, Julia worked harder than anyone expected. Every morning, she woke up early and arrived at the kitchen before most students. She practiced techniques again and again. She learned how to prepare sauces, handle meat, and master complicated French dishes. The woman who once struggled with a single onion slowly became one of the strongest students in the class. Even though some people still doubted her, Julia didn't care. She wasn't there for their approval. She had found something she truly loved. After completing her training, Julia wanted to share French cooking with ordinary Americans. Together with 2 French cooking partners, she began teaching classes. At first, only a few students attended. The money they earned barely covered the cost of ingredients. But Julia didn't care. She believed cooking should be understandable for everyone. That belief led them to a bigger dream. They wanted to create a cookbook that could actually teach Americans how to cook French food. Not a book written only for professional chefs. A book for anyone willing to step into the kitchen. Julia translated complicated French recipes into simple English. She tested every dish again and again. If someone with no cooking experience couldn't make it successfully, the recipe wasn't finished. Writing the book became a massive project. But then life became complicated. Paul was transferred because of his government work. During the Cold War, his past overseas experience caused questions and investigations. The couple had to move several times, from Paris to other cities, and eventually back to America. But no matter where they lived, Julia continued working. She carried her notes, her recipes, and her dream with her. For 8 years, she dedicated herself to the book. When the manuscript was finally completed, it was more than 700 pages. It contained everything from sauces and soups to meat, seafood, and desserts. But when publishers saw the size of the book, they hesitated. They believed ordinary families would never want something so detailed. They suggested making it shorter and simpler. Julia refused. She didn't want to create a quick guide. She wanted to create something that could truly teach people. After making adjustments, she submitted the book again. And again, she was rejected. The reason was always the same. The book was too large. The printing cost was too high. After years of work, Julia finally broke down. But Paul reminded her of something important. Someone would eventually recognize what she had created. Someone would understand the value of her work. And eventually, someone did. Her name was Judith Jones. When Judith read Julia's manuscript, she immediately saw something special. She tested the recipes herself. After tasting beef bourguignon made from Julia's instructions, she knew this was not an ordinary cookbook. She decided to publish it. For Julia and Paul, it was a moment they had waited years for. The book was called Mastering the Art of French Cooking. After its release in 1961, it became a huge success. It changed the way Americans viewed cooking. Julia Child later became a television personality, bringing French cooking into homes across the country. The woman with the pearl necklace and unforgettable laugh became an inspiration for generations. Meanwhile, Julie's journey was also reaching its final chapter. After their argument, she began to understand something important. She had spent too much time seeking approval from strangers online. She had forgotten why she started. Cooking was never supposed to be a way to prove her worth. It was supposed to bring her happiness. So Julie apologized to Eric. They repaired their relationship, and she continued finishing her challenge. Finally, after 1 year, Julie completed all 524 recipes. The impossible goal she once doubted became reality. Her blog attracted attention from the media. A journalist eventually visited her small kitchen. While interviewing her, he asked about her connection with Julia Child. Julie explained that while cooking, she often felt like Julia was there beside her, like an imaginary friend guiding her through the process. But then came an unexpected message. A reporter told Julie that Julia Child herself had heard about the blog, and Julia wasn't impressed. She didn't understand why someone would recreate her recipes as a personal challenge. For Julie, hearing that was painful. She had spent a year looking up to Julia. She wanted her approval, but after thinking about it, she finally understood. Julia Child never owed her that approval. The person who inspired her had already given her something much more valuable: the courage to begin. Julie wrote one final thought on her blog. Cooking wasn't a path to somewhere else. Cooking itself was the destination. In the end, the two women never met. Julia never knew how deeply she had influenced Julie. Julie never received the recognition she hoped for. But that didn't matter anymore, because sometimes the people who inspire us don't need to know. And sometimes our dreams don't need anyone else's permission. Separated by 50 years, two women connected through butter, wine, recipes, and a shared desire to create something meaningful. Julia Child taught people how to cook. Julie Powell discovered how to live. And both proved the same thing. You don't need someone else to tell you your journey matters. You just need the courage to keep going. Bon appétit!